read to you from Bloodsong, Book 2 in my Midnight Playground series, available now from Champagne Publishing. Aileron held his hand out to her. He was aware of Callum's patient anticipation, the rise in his excitement as the female approached. His own body was responding, his mind absolutely in a tumble as she drew nearer. Whatever was wrong with him? He forced himself to calm, to look into her golden eyes. "You like to watch," he said softly. "Yes," she answered, her voice a breathless whisper. He smiled. "Then watch us, my beauty." He led her to a small, velvet-covered stool a foot or two from the cross to which Callum was bound, and held onto her hand as she seated herself. Her posture was perfect, rigid yet graceful, and although her face was calm, he could hear every sharp intake of her breath. He could smell the soft feminine fragrance of her desire like perfume in the air. He didn't want to let her hand go, but he did. Turning back to Callum, he forced his mind to focus. "Callum, you're still hard and eager, but you need to be worked up again, don't you?" "Yes, Aileron," he answered. "And you'll enjoy being worked in front of this lovely woman, won't you, Callum?" "As it pleases you, Aileron." "Of course." He stepped closer to Callum, trailed one finger over his wide chest, stopping to pinch his nipple, a hard, punishing pinch. He smiled when Callum's cock jumped. "But it will please you to perform for her." "Yes," Callum said. Aileron pinched again. "Yes, Aileron, she's very beautiful." "After I whip you, feed on you, you'd love to fuck her, wouldn't you?" "Ah, yes." "We shall see, because I'd like to fuck her myself. Or perhaps you, or perhaps both." Callum groaned, his cock absolutely rigid, the head darkening. Aileron stepped back then and taking up a heavy suede flogger began a steady whipping across the front of Callum's body, his chest and arms, his thighs and calves, even the tops of his feet, which he knew Callum loved. Callum was moaning, his hips arcing into the air. Aileron read his pain, tracking it, focusing in and backing off when it really got to be too much. Even a man of Callum's size and musculature could only take so much. He was only human and couldn't handle what another vampire could, certainly. He kept it up, the even, steady strokes of leather upon flesh. Callum became more and more excited, his pleasure rising, his cock pulsing, and all the time she sat to one side, mirage. He could feel her, sense her, smell her, hear her blood hammering with need in her delicate veins. He was sinking into the rhythm of it now, the flogger, the two beating human hearts, the sharp sense of lust, of blood beneath the skin begging for him. He moved in until his leather-clad thigh was pressed against Callum's, positioning himself so the woman could watch. He reached down to take the man's cock in his hand once more, heard his gasping intake of breath. He stroked once, from base to tip, his fingers tracing the ridge below the swollen head. His own cock was almost as hard, simply handling Callum, and knowing that she watched them, that he would have her next, made him even harder. Patience, he told himself. Yes, knowing was enough for now. Almost. "You're going to come for me, Callum," he commanded. "Yes, Aileron, now. Not quite yet." Aileron stroked again, harder, faster, felt the heat of Callum's cock surge in his palm. He leaned in until his cheek rested on Callum's, whispered, "I'm thirsty tonight. First you will slake my thirst, then you will come for me, and for this lovely creature so ardently watching us. She wants to see you come as much as I do. She wants to see me drink from you." He sensed the acceleration of her heartbeat, felt Callum's do the same, his cock hummed with desire. His tongue was prickling with need, his body too hot. He was aching with the need for blood, the need to come, the need for human flesh. The pulse beat of his need was an ancient and sometimes terrible thing. Tonight, it was almost unbearable. But he was old enough to bear it, and he would, until he truly couldn't stand it any longer. He fisted his hand tighter around Callum's big cock. He could feel how close he was, knew he couldn't hold back any longer. He raised his face, his cheek nuzzling the leather cuff that held Callum's wrist. His tongue flicked out, touched the pulse point just below the heavy cuff. Callum groaned. Aileron opened his mouth, and inhaled the fragrant heat of Callum's skin. "Please, Alaron," the man begged. Alaron smiled to himself and bit. The blood was hot in his mouth, elemental, earthy, and behind the blood was the flavor of the man's flesh, sweet and salty all at once. He pulled in the first mouthful, swallowed, saw into Callum's mind. He was picturing the woman, Mirage. It hit Alaron like some sort of shock to see her this way as he drank from Callum's wrist. It was almost as though she were there with him, drinking, stroking the man's cock. She was in his head somehow. His mind was going dark. He struggled to hang on to Callum's mind, his sensations which were thrumming through his own body. He had that keen humming sensation that happened only when two vampires engaged in pain play, his veins heating, singing, the Bloodsong. And it was her, he was certain of it. But she was human. How? When it wasn't even her he played, when he wasn't even touching her. And human. Human. But he couldn't stop, his cock like a hammer between his legs, pulsing and heavy. He felt Callum weakening, knew he'd had enough, had to fight the raging desire to keep drinking, until the man was empty. And that's all you get. You'll have to buy the book to find out what else happens. You can get it at samhainpublishing.com, on Amazon, or just go to my website, www.edenbradley.com, or visit me at the Smutketeers blog, www.smutketeers.com. Bye.